So the next slide we're going to cover is the key elements regarding a 2022 cloud security strategy that you should be thinking of as an organisation. So I'll do a couple and then we'll pass to Julie as well, but it'll be a bit of a to me, to you kind of thing. So the first one is also, it's a big one really. It's that decide whether you want to use one cloud vendor or use multiple cloud vendors. There's a big decision to be made on that lot. And from my experience, companies stick with one main cloud security vendor, one main cloud vendor, but then they utilize a second cloud vendor for, let's call them supporting services or ancillary services as well. Now, as an organization yourself, when you're starting that journey, make that call whether you'd be using the one or the two or three, for instance. But I would always, if you are using multiple, you do need that core cloud service and that core cloud vendor that you stick with. Don't do a 50-50 split would be my advice as well. Julie, do you want to talk about the training?
Sure. So, employee training is quite a big part of the transition to cloud, and certainly, and I'm relatively new to Microsoft, but in my past experience, I've worked quite a lot with really large global financial services customers, and that is something that they've often spent quite a lot of months planning for, as the employee training as they move to the cloud. Obviously, from a sort of IT perspective, moving to the cloud is a different consumption model, and as we'll talk through later, employee training is important not only to potentially keep your costs down and avoid kind of expensive mistakes with cloud, but also from a security point of view. There's different elements to consider compared to just having everything on-prem as we've been perhaps more used to in the past. So it sounds like a simple thing, but it's something that's important to plan beforehand and put an appropriate training plan in place to keep costs down and also to keep security in place as well, so it's not compromised as part of that move to the cloud.
Yeah. So regarding any policies and regulations you need to follow, as you think about moving to a cloud, that's something you really need to consider, especially regarding data sovereignty, data access, and also if you work for a global organization with global, you need to really understand and design from the offset where your data is going to be and how it's going to be accessed and managed. Obviously, we know about the European and GDPR, but many other organizations, many other governments are then implementing their own versions of GDPR. So if you do work or you do have a multi-global organization, your cloud strategy will need to make sure that the relevant data for those locations cover those government legislations and regulations as well. It's something that could get you into trouble. So it's obviously worthwhile getting that working that out at the beginning, talking to your legal team as well, and then designing your cloud service with those considerations in place. The next one is about reinforcing the monitoring and accountability. Julie, do you want to pick that one up?
Sure. So yeah, again, just to touch on some of the things that Phil was saying there about compliance, I think that's particularly important for customers in highly regulated industries like government. As I say, I've got quite a lot of experience with financial services clients, and I've seen, some of the global financial services clients sign up to a cloud service and then discover 6 months down the line that they perhaps don't have a cloud presence in a specific location where data has to be kept in country in that region. So those sort of things I think are really important to check, because it's quite difficult later on to try and pull back from that choice. In terms of monitoring and accountability, again, a lot of the benefits of cloud are the ease of kind of turning things on, getting things up and running much quicker. But I think it's important to remember you can't just turn it on and then walk away and leave it running and not make sure that things are as they should be. So again, just reinforcing the monitoring capabilities, whether you choose to use those that are native to your cloud provider or whether you choose to use some third-party monitoring tools that you can implement in that cloud, is really important to make sure that your security monitoring is there, that everything continues to work as expected when you set it up, and also defining the accountability of the cloud environments as well. You'll often hear the term shared responsibility used when it comes to cloud. So I think it's important to be clear, whatever cloud provider you use, be clear on what the provider is responsible for securing and what you're responsible for securing as a user of that cloud, because that can differ slightly depending on the cloud provider that you choose as well.
Yeah, definitely. A RACI matrix would really help you and also help all the teams understand where the demarcation points and where the lines are. And lastly, you need to make sure that you have some flexibility in the cloud security setup. Myself and Julie were talking about this last week, and years ago, so I'm sure my age now, when you made that decision on what SAN storage you were going to use, or if you were going to go through a whole Cisco network, those decisions were decisions that you would keep for a long time throughout the IT ecosystem. So again, when you're choosing those cloud vendor, when you're choosing how it's going to be managed, how it's going to be owned and looked after, these are going to be long-term decisions that you're going to have to make sure you can manage and adapt to any changes that happen throughout your organization. So again, ensure that you put in some kind of flexibility in your cloud security setup and the cloud setup as well.